Looking at the system particularly has taught us that command and control in a hierarchical organisation has a place and a time without a shadow of a doubt, but actually that place and time is not everywhere. So as an emergency service, clearly when we respond to an incident, we need to have layers of authority and decision making which are effective in order to deal with that emergency incident. But actually applying those same rules to day-to-day business outside of the emergency environment, it's not as productive as utilising all of the brain power that you've got within your organisation. I think one of the biggest shocks that we had organisationally, and we continue to have big shocks, I hasten to say, because we definitely are only still at the start of our journey, was around our crewing. You will always see that a whole-time station will have a fire appliance available 24/7. But actually one of the things that we didn't really understand was the cost to the service. We assume the cost is the person's salary on a day. But when you really start to delve into it and you start to look at how many staff you've actually got at work and then start to understand the costs, we did find out some quite staggering information. One of those included the fact that for an appliance to be used with all of our safe practices, we need a certain number of people available to crew that appliance. So when we added all the service together, we found that only on 17% of the time did we actually have the right number at the right place in the right environment. So that meant that 83% of the time we either had too many people at work. Now I'm not saying that that means they didn't have anything to do, because of course there is work to be done, but if you strip it right down to the demand at an operational incident, we have a set number that we need, and anything above is always a bonus. So a proportion of the time of that 83% we'd have too many, and then a proportion of the time we wouldn't actually have enough. So we'd be paying overtime and other systems that we'd put in place in order to ensure we did have the right number. So we weren't using our resources effectively. But because the appliances were going in and out and we had numbers on those appliances and they weren't off the run, we thought that we had that area of the organisation fairly well controlled, and actually our figures proved that we didn't really have any control over it at all. There was quite some trepidation about removing targets, and people were quite scared because of course what gets measured gets done is an interesting mantra. But from a point of view of the performance for the last 12 months, actually, the service has seen its best performance ever. I would say that one of the key things that we have moved and we are continuing to move towards is using performance information far more intelligently than we've ever done before. So previously, we'd have used RAG reporting, so red, amber and green reporting, which basically meant if everything was green, then that meant everything was good, and so we didn't really need to do any more. But actually, what we didn't really understand was the information coming from that data and then how to use it to improve our service. So the move to statistical process control has been an evolving journey for us organisationally. And we are now slowly starting to absolutely get better at understanding what our demand is telling us and then how we can shape the service around the demand that's coming into the organisation. We looked at our home fire risk check approach back last year, and when we actually looked at the form that we were asking our staff to use and to gain data on, there was approximately 60 to 80 questions on that form. And when we asked the questions, why, there were a number of answers that came up. The first one being, because it's always been like this. And so of course that's a big challenge. Just because something was right at a point in time doesn't mean it's right for today. So that was a big challenge. The second answer that people would come up with, well, because we need the data in order to improve the service that we deliver. Now that's a really valid answer. So when we actually asked, when you input the data into the system, how do you then use it? We didn't get very many responses because actually the data coming back out wasn't interrogated in a way that could be useful to improve the service. So we streamlined that whole approach, cut the data collection down dramatically to ensure that the questions we were asking were the right question for, firstly, the returns that we have to make organisationally, but secondly, that it would allow us to improve our service and understand our customers in far more depth. We have had less accidental dwelling fires, we've had less injuries. We have seen some increases in other areas, but we're trying to understand why have we had those increases and what can we do to actually stop them happening. For us, it's about the outcomes for the communities, those vulnerable people that are out there that need our services, and that hopefully we can prevent needing our emergency service aspect, which of course we know is the most expensive arm of the service anyway. So for us, prevention is definitely better than cure, and something that we would promote to all public sector organisations, because if you can prevent people getting into need, you stop the demand right at the very beginning.